Hi, this is Dan from Magic Pachinko Restorations, and we are now at part 4 on the restoration. So far, what I've done is taken these parts off of the machine. So the hopper was here, the ball feed was here, the turnaround was here, and then these are just covers that were the jackpot cover down here and a cover here. And again, remember I said when I take things off, I put the screws back into the main part of the unit, so I know where the screws are for that particular piece. A lot of these screws are all the same, so it's not that critical that you do that, but every once in a while you'll find some that are a little bit different size and or a little bit different length, and it's good to be able to put the right screws back in the right spot. So those covers are off. I've also taken the wiring harness off, and one thing that I noticed when I did the wiring harness is that somebody at the factory really enjoyed working with the staple gun. This particular machine had a lot of staples in it. The wiring harness was all up in here, and it was many staples. And when I got around to pulling the staples from the main guts, if you will, they were everywhere. And part of the problem when you refinish a Pachinko machine is that over 40 plus years, these backboards will absorb a lot of moisture. They're a plywood, and they'll absorb a lot of moisture. So anything that is metal that's gone into that board tends to get rusty. And the more moisture that's in the board, the more rusty the metal gets. And the more rusty that the metal gets, the harder it is to pull the metal parts out of the wood. If you're fortunate enough to get a Pachinko machine that's stayed dry over its time, you'll see a huge difference when you go to pull staples and nails. Same with the screws. The screws will rust and they get very hard to unscrew. So there's some ways of getting around it, and we can talk about that when we get to it. So with this particular machine being a Sankyo, they build their guts, if you will, a little bit different than some other types of manufacturers. I just recently finished a machine where with all of these parts still attached, there's 5 special screws that hold the entire guts on. You take the 5 screws out, the whole guts just lift right off, which is kind of nice because you're not dealing with all the staples and so on and so forth. This one is sort of like that. It does have some loose parts, and then you've got the main guts. So I've gotten all of the staples out of the main guts. The only thing that I've done with the main guts is I did take this one cover off, and there was a cover here also that was stapled that would have prevented me from getting the guts off. But when I take a look at this, I realize that this is going to come off in a unit. So there was 2 screws here holding it to the green piece, but right now it's ready to come off the board. So you want to be real careful when you're removing parts from a Pachinko. They should come off relatively easy. You shouldn't have to force anything. If you find yourself forcing something, chances are something's wrong. So again, after getting all the staples out, taking these 2 screws out, this whole unit just comes off in one piece. Okay, so you can see it's dirty on the inside. This is where the balls run. It gets very dirty on the inside. This is just absolutely filthy. The outer portion of it is got a lot of dirt on it. And in another video, we'll do some work on how to actually take this apart. Again, take pictures of the way it looks now, and as you start to take it apart, try to be as organized as you can by laying parts out in certain areas. Try to keep the hardware that goes here. This is probably a whole tutorial on itself, but while we do have this here, this is actually a pretty good teaching tool to show you how the balls go through a Pachinko machine. So I'll try to get this in as close as possible. The balls will go in the hopper, down that rail into the turnaround, and then they'll drop into what's called the jackpot chamber. This is the jackpot chamber here. And this is set up with a double run of balls that come in. So 7 balls will go into the jackpot chamber here, and 7 balls will go on the other side. So this area right in here will fill with 7 balls, and 7 balls on this side. And that's where the balls stop, and they're queued up there, if you will. So the mechanism of this is such that your seesaw chamber this is the seesaw chamber right here. The actual seesaw goes back and forth like a seesaw. The 2 balls that are in there are permanent. Don't try to take them out of there. You can take the seesaw apart on some of the models. I do, only to clean it, but then I put it back together again. This one is all plastic. It's sealed, so you don't have to worry about it. You just clean it on the outside. It just sits in here and pivots back and forth, but there's a run right where, I don't know if you can see it or not, right where this finger is on the back side, right here. And then there's another run right here. So when a winning Pachinko ball comes into the back side, they drop into this area here. They would drop and hit. They're going to roll down to the seesaw. I don't know if I've got a ball around. No, probably not. They roll down to the seesaw. The seesaw will then tip down and let the ball come out here. It then drops here and hits this arm right here. And the weight of the ball releases this arm. There's a catch that keeps it in place, but it will release and it will drop down. At this point, the winning ball drops out of the machine, out through a chute. But this activates this arm here, pushes it up. So now we're up here. Pushes it up, and this moves this out of the way, which allows this to go in, and it pulls the plate that's holding the balls. So it serves 2 purposes. It goes up and seals the top so no more balls can go in, and it releases the bottom and lets the balls out. And then when the whole thing resets, it closes the bottom, opens the top, 14 more go in, and it's ready for the next payout. Now up here would be the 2 arms that control the feet of the balls. It's not there now, so I can freely move this arm. So when you go to take this apart, you've got to be a little careful of it. And when you go to put it back together again, this is what you should have when you put it back in this particular mode. When you get it back together to this point, this is what you should be able to do. Completely free movement of that arm. If there's any hang up, any resistance, then you need to go back and take a look at potentially a mistake that you've made, because if you don't have this arm nice and free, the Pachinko just isn't going to work. So lots of screws on here. This is a cover, this is a cover. We already took the one cover off. So initially you're going to get all the covers off. Again, I put the screws back in where they were. Get all the covers off. The jackpot will come off of the base. The jackpot can all be taken apart, cleaned, put back together. These 2 screws come off. This comes out. There's a pin there. This whole unit, same down here. It does go back behind, and there's a slot. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's no, you can't see it, but there's a slot that this arm, the end of the arm travels in. There's actually like a little cupped end that the ball sits on. So when you go to put this arm back in, you won't be attached up here. Now some of them will unattach here and here. This particular one has got adjustment on it. So you would unattach it here, and then you can turn this whole thing so that that little cupped end is normally sitting like that to receive the ball. You need to turn it so it's vertical, and then it'll fit in that slot, and then you turn it back so that it's in its present position like this. And that's going to be the same on any Pachinko that you work. This is all basically all of the same on just about every Pachinko there is. What you can't see behind this cover, there's a big plastic platform that when the balls drop out of here, they hit that platform, the platform tips, it lets the balls run down, bang off this bell, and then out the front of the machine. Okay? So again, you're going to just take this apart as carefully as possible. Take a lot of pictures. There is a fair amount of coordination that's going on here with the different pieces. This little arm here is attached to this. This arm goes down to here. This is the reset for the seesaw chamber. So as long as you're getting good pictures and taking a look at the functionality before you take it apart, you're in pretty good shape. Okay? So we'll revisit this after I've got it all apart and clean.